Judge Jeanine Pirro believed she had Congresswoman Jasmine Crockett trapped. What took place in the following 30 seconds didn't just quiet the Fox News anchor, it completely dismantled her broadcast and possibly ended her entire career. Inside the Fox studio, tension buzzed as Pirro got ready for what she thought would be her most brutal takedown yet. Holding what she described as bombshell proof, the seasoned broadcaster was sure she could ruin the rising Democratic figure from Texas. But Crockett had something unexpected, proof that would completely rewrite the moment. For several weeks before this face-off, Fox News had marketed it as the ultimate showdown. Their ads replayed Pirro's most brutal moments, scenes where she had humiliated other Democratic figures, using her cutting remarks and fierce questioning. Executives at the network were so certain in her ability that they cleared the primetime schedule, expecting record-breaking viewer numbers. Conservative influencers hyped it online, predicting it would expose what they labeled as the radical left's newest face. Right-wing media had posted long articles digging into Crockett's background, hoping to hand Pirro something she could use during the exchange. Before we dive into this unforgettable face-off, don't forget to tap that subscribe button and turn on the bell so you never miss these intense political showdowns. Trust me, you'll want to see what happens next. Everything was ready for what turned out to be the year's most unexpected political clash. Two strong women, two completely opposite visions for the country, and a single moment that changed the entire landscape. This wasn't just a heated exchange. It was political combat at its sharpest. Nobody imagined that the fight would take a turn completely opposite from what everyone had predicted. Judge Jeanine Pirro made her name by tearing down politicians she saw as threats to American values. At 73, the former prosecutor turned right TV icon never ran from conflict. Her Saturday program, Justice with Judge Jeanine, was a must-watch for millions of conservatives who enjoyed seeing her slice through liberal figures with pinpoint precision. Her fame rested on being unbeatable. She had gone head-to-head with everyone from Pelosi to AOC, and always seemed to win. Her sharp legal brain and fiery voice made her one of Fox's most intimidating voices. She lived in a luxurious Westchester mansion, drove top-tier vehicles, and commanded respect wherever she appeared. But that night, her opponent wasn't the usual kind. Jasmine Crockett wasn't your average target. Only 43, she had already made waves as one of the sharpest legal thinkers in Congress. A former Dallas public defender, she grew up in a working-class household and pushed through law school while raising her children. Unlike the wealthy officials Pirro usually battled, Crockett had lived what everyday Americans experience. Her road to Capitol Hill was far from smooth. After finishing law school at Southern Methodist University, she spent over 10 years on the front lines of the justice system, defending those who couldn't afford top lawyers. She saw the system up close, manipulated by those with money and connections, lessons that shaped her political style. During her legal career, Crockett built a name for being extremely thorough and finding flaws even in cases that looked airtight. Her co-workers often joked she could find a needle in a haystack if it helped her client. That talent became a weapon in politics. When she first campaigned for Congress, many pundits brushed her off as just another idealist who wouldn't last. But those who worked with her knew she could leave even senior prosecutors stumbling with nothing but her facts and prep work in Congress. She gained attention for her sharp lines during committee sessions and her habit of cutting through the drama with logic and facts. She had already left several Republican reps red-faced, but going face-to-face with Judge Jeanine on her home turf, that was another test entirely. This wasn't just a clash of characters. It was a deep ideological and generational showdown for the direction of U.S. politics. Pirro stood for the old guard conservative elite, while Crockett symbolized the new generation bold, diverse Democrats unafraid of pushing back. Fox had hyped this fight for days. Their base wanted another win. What they didn't realize was that Crockett had been preparing her whole life for a moment like this. Everything about it screamed drama, a veteran conservative, secure in her own space, facing a Democratic rising star with no safety net, and everything to prove. Viewers tuned in, expecting destruction. They just didn't know who would be destroyed. As the cameras turned on, both women understood this was more than just another televised segment. This was a defining moment for both their legacies, one that would echo across American politics. Bright studio lights lit the set. Judge Jeanine Pirro sat at her desk, her signature-fitted suit crisp, her expression icy and sharp. Across from her, Representative Crockett was composed and confident, her blazer neat, her energy calm. The tension was thick in the room. Off camera, Producers watched eagerly. They had teased this episode for days, claiming Judge Jeanine would rip apart the radical left's newest figure. The studio was filled with cheering conservatives, some wearing MAGA caps, others waving support Judge Jeanine signs. They expected a political bloodbath, their champion demolishing another left-leaning opponent on national TV. Behind the scenes, the Fox News social team was already planning to push out hashtags like #JudgeJeanine and #CrockettExposed, fully expecting the internet to light up with Pirro's triumph. They had done it before, with AOC, with Ilhan Omar, with every young Democratic woman who challenged their agenda. This night was supposed to follow the same script, or so they believed. Congresswoman Crockett, Pirro began, her tone thick with smugness. Thank you for finally showing the courage to appear on my show. Though I wonder if you'll keep that courage after I reveal who you really are. The audience came alive. This was the Pirro they adored. Fierce, sharp, unrelenting. Cheers broke out. The setup was in motion. Crockett simply smiled. Thank you for inviting me, Judge. I'm ready to have this conversation. Her peaceful tone only made Pirro feel more sure of herself. She had seen this before. Young hopefuls trying to stay composed before she ripped into them live. Pirro leaned back slightly, like a lion ready to strike. But conversation wasn't her goal. Demolition was. Let's cut to the chase, she said, leaning forward like a prosecutor about to crush a case. You've barely served 2 years in Congress, and already you've turned this place into a joke. Your so-called questioning of Republican witnesses is nothing more than a performance for viral clips. The first punch had landed. The audience braced for more. Conservative viewers nodded in agreement, while a few Democratic watchers shifted uneasily in their seats. This was Pirro's territory, and she was sticking to her style. Crockett stayed composed, hands folded, face calm. Judge, my history speaks volumes, she said. As someone who served as a public defender, I've learned how to dig for the truth. That skill came long before I ever considered a seat in Congress. Public defender? Pirro scoffed, her tone sharpening. You mean defending criminals who harm innocent people? And do you think that makes you qualified to talk to the rest of us about honesty? The audience reacted. These were the kind of low blows they expected from Pirro. Sharp, personal, meant to rattle her opponent. But Crockett didn't blink. I defended constitutional rights, Judge. You know that thing you swore to uphold back when you were a prosecutor, the document that guarantees every person a fair trial. For a split second, a crack showed in Pirro's armor. Her confident grin wavered, but she quickly regained composure, jumping to her next point. Don't try to school me on the Constitution, she snapped. I've been standing up for it longer than you've been around. Let's focus on your real record in Congress. You've backed every single extreme leftist idea thrown your way. You voted to slash police budgets, raise taxes on working people, and hand out money to those who won't work. Pirro was on a roll now. Her voice gained strength with every jab. The crowd was into it, some even clapped. This was the fiery delivery they came to watch. You claim to speak for Texans, she barked, but your votes prove you're just a puppet for your party's radical wing. You follow AOC, you echo Schumer, and there isn't a socialist plan you don't support. The verbal punches kept coming. This was Pirro's arena, with her fans, on her stage, using her rules. She believed Crockett was cornered. But Crockett refused to bite. She stayed relaxed, nodding occasionally, her face thoughtful, not angry. It looked like she was waiting for the right moment. Judge Crockett finally spoke, voice steady and calm. Are you done? Because I'd like to reply not with slogans, but with real facts. Facts. Pirro barked out a laugh that rang through the room. The only fact here is, you're a dangerous radical who has no place representing decent Texans. You are exactly what's wrong with the Democrats: too young, too green, and totally disconnected from real people. Pirro's attacks had moved beyond politics. Now they were about who Crockett was, her background, her credibility, her very right to lead. The crowd grew more charged with each insult. You want to talk about being disconnected? Pirro pressed, now standing, her voice bouncing off studio walls. You live in comfort and political games, while everyday people can't even afford groceries or gas. And your answer? Bigger government, higher taxes, free handouts for the lazy. Crockett nodded slowly, absorbing it all. A faint smile tugged at the corners of her lips. Then she opened her briefcase and pulled out a folder. Judge, I've listened carefully to everything you've said, she said, and I'll admit you're right about one thing. Facts are important. So here are some facts. Yours. The air shifted. Crockett's voice carried new confidence. The studio went still. Pirro remained standing, arms crossed, smirking. "Please," she sneered. "Enlighten us with your version of reality." "Oh, these aren't my facts," Crockett replied, opening the folder. "These are public records, anyone can find them, including your producers, who I'm sure did their research." Pirro's smirk twitched. Something had changed in the room. The audience grew quiet. They sensed something big was coming. "Before coming here tonight," Crockett continued, "I did what I always do, my homework, and I found something interesting." She held up a paper toward the cameras. "This is your government salary tax return. It shows some curious things about someone who claims to stand for average Americans." Silence fell. Pirro's face drained of color. Slowly, she sank into her chair. The tables had turned. What started as Pirro's ambush had become something else entirely. The hunter was now the prey. And the real clash was just starting. In the control room, Fox News staff were in chaos. Nothing was going as planned. Their top host, known for dominating every debate, was visibly rattled. Producers typed furiously, trying to figure out how to save the show. One whispered into his headset, "Do we cut to commercial early?" But it was already too late. Everyone in the building and, watching at home, could feel it. Power was shifting. The once confident Pirro was now facing someone who had come prepared for war. Twitter was already exploding. Clips of Crockett's.com replies and Pirro's frantic attacks were spreading fast. Fox's planned hashtags were being hijacked by viewers. Something historic was happening. The silence in the studio was louder than any applause. Judge Jeanine Pirro, moments ago standing tall and delivering her knockout attack, now sat frozen, staring at the paper Crockett held. "You want to talk about being disconnected from real Americans?" Crockett asked, her tone steady but now carrying a fresh sense of power that drew everyone's focus. "Then let's bring up your $3.2 million luxury home in Westchester County. Let's mention your six-figure speaking payments. Let's point out how someone earning over $7 million a year dares to lecture hard-working families about so-called government freebies." The first piece of evidence landed like an explosion. Just moments earlier, the audience had been cheering for Pirro. But now, a tense silence filled the room. Pirro's lips parted slightly. But she couldn't form a single word. And that was only the start. Judge Crockett moved forward, revealing a second file. "When you called me a puppet of the far left, I figured you'd have something to say about this." She lifted a document, clearly visible on camera. "This contract from 2019 shows you received $150,000 to speak at a conference hosted by a company that was, at the time, under federal investigation for fraud. That same company was later convicted of stealing millions from working-class families." Pirro's complexion shifted from pale to flushed. She leaned toward the desk, trying to steer the discussion back into her control. "That's totally taken out of context. I didn't know anything about an investigation when I—" "Oh, but you did know," Crockett interjected smoothly, pulling out yet another paper. "Because this email, sent to your agent 3 weeks before the event, specifically mentioned the ongoing federal case. Your agent even forwarded it to you with a note saying, 'FYI, might want to reconsider this one.'" The moment hit like lightning. Audible gasps erupted from the audience. Several covered their mouths in disbelief. These were the same supporters who had come to cheer on Pirro as she dismantled another Democrat. Instead, they were watching their champion fall apart. As a hypocrite dotted the back of the studio, a Fox News guard leaned toward a colleague and whispered, "She's got receipts for everything. I've never seen anything like this." The camera crew, seasoned veterans of many political showdowns, exchanged knowing glances. They understood something historic was unfolding live. Pirro now clenched the arms of her chair, her knuckles white. Her usual stone-faced poise honed from years in law and on air was visibly cracking. For the first time, Judge Jeanine Pirro faced a rival more equipped and more prepared. "But you didn't back out, did you, Judge?" Crockett continued. "You accepted that $150,000 from a company robbing the same people you claimed to support." The Fox cameras caught everything, the shock on Pirro's face, the stunned silence from the crowd, and the sheer control Crockett now held. This wasn't just a comeback. It was a full-on collapse of everything. Pirro had built her argument on "How dare you," Pirro started, her voice rising. But Crockett wasn't finished. "We're just getting warmed up. Judge, when you questioned my integrity, I figured it was only fair to examine yours." She placed a thick bundle of documents on the desk, These are formal complaints filed during your tenure as a prosecutor. 37, in total alleging misconduct, evidence suppression, and cases pursued without proper cause. That's 37 families forced to fight for justice against a prosecutor more focused on winning than doing what's right. Whispers spread like wildfire. Murmurs of disbelief rippled through the audience. This was unlike anything they'd ever seen. A guest completely dismantling a Fox host, using detailed research and factual records. Pirro shot up from her chair, her face blazing with fury and embarrassment. This is slander. You're ambushing me with lies and documents taken out of context. Lies? Crockett asked, rising as well, still composed and in control. Judge, these are court records, public documents, your own emails. If these are lies, then you're accusing the entire legal system of being dishonest. You're not understanding the full context. Pirro tried again. Crockett raised a hand, cutting her off. Context? You want context? For the last 10 minutes, you've attacked my credibility, questioned my background, and called me unfit to represent my community. All while this, she gestured to the mountain of paperwork, sits on your record. So tell me, judge, who's truly disconnected from real people? The public defender who stood by those who couldn't afford a lawyer, or the prosecutor who pocketed money from fraudsters, stealing from everyday families? The question echoed in the room like a final verdict. Pirro opened her mouth again, but still no words came out. For the first time, Jeanine Pirro was speechless. On her own show, behind the scenes, chaos erupted. Fox executives were on phones, speaking in urgent tones. One insider later revealed that Rupert Murdoch himself had called the control room in a panic, demanding to know what had just happened. The network's crisis team had already been activated, preparing emergency responses. They knew this segment would dominate the news for days. Across newsrooms nationwide, editors scrambled to assign follow-up stories to verify Crockett's documents. The Associated Press had already deployed 3 investigative reporters. The Washington Post was drafting what would become a brutal expose of Pirro's legal history. Meanwhile, rival networks' social teams were busy. They were splicing together key clips from the episode to post online. Highlight reels were being created, featuring the most damaging parts of the exchange. By evening, slick, professional edits were circulating across every platform, showcasing the downfall of Pirro in painful clarity. You want to talk qualifications? Crockett pressed on, her voice rising with strength. I didn't get here through privilege. I wasn't handed this job. I earned it because the people of my district trusted me. They believed I'd fight for them, just like I fought for every client who couldn't fight for themselves. What began as a planned ambush had now turned into a lesson in political battle. Crockett hadn't just defended herself, she'd flipped the script, completely outmaneuvering her opponent with undeniable facts. And as for being called a puppet, she added while collecting her materials, I've never taken money from companies being investigated. I've never ignored red flags. And I've certainly never judged others while hiding skeletons in my own closet. Still on her feet, Pirro looked around, searching for help that wasn't coming. Her own team looked stunned. Her loyal fans were quiet. Her confidence was gone. But possibly the most revealing instant appeared during a pause for commercials, when cameras captured Pirro urgently whispering to her producer. A member of the audience with sharp lip-reading skills later shared online that Pirro had whispered, "How does she have all of this? We must stop this now." But her production team shook their heads. They were broadcasting live on national TV, and cutting things short would only create more problems. When the break ended, Pirro made a final, desperate move to get control back. "Congresswoman, it's clear you've prepared a lot for this discussion," Pirro said, attempting to sound superior, but instead sounding defeated. "But papers can be misinterpreted. Results are what truly matter. And your track record says." Crockett cut in, a small smile on her face. "Let's discuss records, Judge, since he mentioned it," she said, reaching into her bag once more and pulling out what looked like a data report. "This is a detailed breakdown of conviction stats and case outcomes during your time as a Westchester County prosecutor. Want to know what it reveals?" Pirro's face turned pale. She clearly understood what was coming, but had no way to stop it. "It shows your conviction rate was lower than the state average. It shows that 23% of your cases were overturned on appeal, nearly twice the state average. And it shows your office had the highest misconduct rate among prosecutors in all of New York." The final document was the most harmful of all. It wasn't about money or ethics, it was about capability. Crockett had proven that, even by Pirro's own standards, she had failed. So when you bring up results, Judge, whose results are we truly talking about? The final statement hit hard because of its pure simplicity. Crockett didn't need to yell, insult, or belittle. She let the evidence speak, and it spoke with forceful clarity. I think your audience deserves more than someone who preaches values while doing deals with fraudsters. They deserve more than someone who attacks public workers while cashing checks from criminals. Pirro slumped in her seat, her hand slightly trembling. Her fight was gone. She had entered expecting an easy win but ended up facing the biggest embarrassment of her career. Is there anything more you'd like to say? Judge Crockett asked, her tone now gentle, like a teacher offering one last chance. Pirro looked up. Her eyes had lost their usual sharpness. They now looked lost and unsure. We need to break, she murmured, barely audible. But it was too late for a break. The damage was done, the victory complete. And the entire political world was about to see the exact moment when Judge Jeanine Pirro was defeated. The Fox News studio had never seen such a moment. As the cameras cut to a break, the silence was so deep you could hear the AC running. Judge Jeanine Pirro sat, slumped, staring at the table, where Crockett's documents lay scattered, like the debris of her reputation. Meanwhile, Crockett calmly collected her documents and placed them back into her briefcase. She had done what few thought was possible: defeated a Fox News host on their own program, using only facts in readiness. When they returned from commercial, Pirro had vanished. A Fox News staffer quickly stepped in, saying, "Due to technical problems, we're ending tonight's show early." But everyone knew this wasn't a tech issue. It was a total breakdown of one of the network's biggest names. Within moments, clips of the confrontation exploded online. The hashtag Crockett destroys Jeanine was trending on X, formerly Twitter, within the first hour. With over 100,000 tweets and rising fast. Conservative fans were stunned. Many had tuned in, hoping to see their favorite host tear apart another liberal, but instead saw their champion dismantled by a congresswoman ready for battle. One MAGA supporter tweeted, "I can't believe what I just saw. Pirro got completely wrecked. How did Fox allow this?" Another said, "Jasmine Crockett just ended Jeanine's career live. Never seen anything like that." But it wasn't just conservatives reacting. Liberals and progressives celebrated what many called the political takedown of the year. Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez tweeted, "This is what happens when you bring receipts. Jasmine Crockett just taught a masterclass in handling right-wing attacks." MSNBC's Rachel Maddow posted, "Congresswoman Crockett didn't just win a debate. She changed the rules of political warfare. Preparation beats bluster every time." Even President Obama, who rarely comments on daily drama, broke silence with a simple but strong tweet. "When they go low, we go prepared." Well done. Even some Republicans admitted privately that Pirro had been out. One GOP strategist told Politico, "Pirro walked into a trap. Crockett had receipts for everything. It was like watching a law student out-argue a Supreme Court justice." The clips weren't just on political Twitter, they were all over TikTok. Key moments were getting millions of views. Young people who had never heard of Judge Pirro were now posting about her downfall, with laughing emojis and fire symbols. One viral video said, "POV, you tried going after someone who did their homework." Another clip zoomed in on Pirro's face turning pale as Crockett pulled out the first document, with the caption, "When you pick the wrong one to mess with." Celebrities also chimed in. Trevor Noah tweeted, "Crockett just gave a masterclass in being prepared. Take notes." Kerry Washington posted, "This is what happens when brilliance meets preparation. Jasmine Crockett showed us how it's done." Even international media picked it up. A BBC correspondent wrote, "Tonight, American politics reached a new height. Crockett's methodical takedown marks a turning point in how modern political battles are fought, especially in the age of social media." Big media channels were already rushing to schedule interviews with Crockett. CNN, MSNBC, and even some of Fox News's rival stations were calling her office, hoping to get her opinion on what people were calling the most powerful political takedown ever seen on TV. Media experts were actively breaking down what went wrong for Pirro and what worked perfectly for Crockett. Washington Post's media analyst, Margaret Sullivan, wrote, "Pirro's failure wasn't just due to lack of preparation. It happened because she underestimated her challenger." Crockett made it clear that the new wave of politicians won't be scared by the old methods of power. Jonathan Martin, a political reporter for the New York Times, wrote, "This face-off shows a huge change in how political debates are handled. Crockett didn't just protect herself, she went full force, armed with facts, proof, and strong preparation. Even right-wing media found it hard to support Pirro. Fox News leaders were reportedly holding emergency discussions to figure out how to respond to the situation. Some unnamed employees inside the network told reporters that Pirro's program might get reworked or paused while they managed the backlash. Journalists had already started checking the files Crockett exposed. The $150,000 speaker fee from a fake company looked especially bad, making people question Pirro's choices and ethics beyond just political opinions. Legal professionals began discussing whether Pirro's past actions, as a prosecutor mentioned in those reports, needed deeper investigation. Former U.S. Attorney Joyce Vance posted on Twitter, 37 misconduct reports don't just hint at a trend, they reveal a whole system. She said the claims should be taken seriously, but maybe the biggest effect was seen in Crockett herself. Almost instantly, she went from being a less-known congresswoman to a nationwide political figure. Her office got flooded with interview invites, event requests, and campaign donation offers. Democratic strategists were already seeing her as a future party leader who could connect well with young voters and minority communities. Her mix of legal background, fast responses, and calm behavior under stress impressed many political experts. Jasmine Crockett just taught Democrats how to hit back, said CNN analyst Van Jones. She didn't act defensive. She didn't get angry. She brought facts and let those facts talk. That's the right way to respond to attacks from the right. The difference between both women was crystal clear. Pirro, a rich and longtime TV figure known for criticizing others, was taken down by a Texas public defender who had simply come prepared. To many viewers, it wasn't just a debate. It stood for something greater, a shift in generations, where facts win over noise and careful planning beats empty threats. Fox News felt the shock fast. Advertisers started pulling out from Pirro's show, saying they didn't want to be linked with the issue. The network's viewer numbers dropped significantly in the days after the event, as many conservative watchers shared their upsets and frustration. One regular Fox viewer wrote on Facebook, "I've followed Judge Jeanine for years, but after watching her get exposed like that, I'm not sure what to think. If she lied about this, what else has she lied about?" The money loss was serious. Within 2 days, Fox News had lost more than $2 million in ad income as major companies distanced themselves from the problem. MyPillow, one of the network's top advertisers, even released a note saying they were rethinking their support for certain Fox shows. Other news channels were enjoying the moment. CNN's media analyst Brian Stelter did a full segment on Pirro. Fall. MSNBC's top hosts spent several nights talking about what they called the strongest takedown of a right-wing media figure ever seen. The audience numbers told the same story. Pirro's show, which usually pulled in 2.5 million viewers, dropped to only 800,000 the next week. Even more damaging for Fox's profits, the key 25 to 54-year-old viewer group nearly vanished from the show. With ratings in that bracket dropping sharply, media industry experts were already wondering if this one event might forever change how political interviews are done on cable. TV Variety's TV reviewer wrote that Crockett had raised the standard for being ready and being honest. Other politicians would likely study her method, and hosts would now be more careful before attacking someone without solid proof. At the same time, Crockett's strong showing gave a big boost to Democratic voters and liberal activists. Donations to her campaign for re-election jumped quickly after the debate. With small contributions coming from all over the US, many young women were especially moved by seeing someone like them stand up to and beat one of the most well-known conservative TV names. Colleges across America noticed more student interest in political science and law degrees, with lots of students naming Crockett's performance as the reason for their new passion. People were still debating the long-term effects on US political discussion, but one thing was certain: the old way of winning just by being louder or having a big media platform had ended. Crockett proved that careful prep, strong evidence, and steady confidence could beat showy anger and fear tactics. She proved that new leaders wouldn't be pushed aside or scared by the tricks of the past. As for Jeanine Pirro, her future looked unsure. Fox News hadn't made any public choices about her program, but people inside the industry said her time as a leading conservative voice might be over. The woman who built her image by attacking others had finally met someone who stood her ground and lost. But the story wasn't finished. In the days after the clash, reporters started digging further into the papers Crockett had shown. The $50,000 speaker payment led to findings of other suspicious money deals. The misconduct files about her time as a prosecutor sparked fresh talks about law system reform and the need for accountability. Legal teachers were already recommending that Crockett's strategy be studied in law schools as a perfect example of how to argue under pressure. Jonathan Turley, a law professor at George Washington University, tweeted, "Crockett's handling of the moment was a legal class in action. She saw every attack coming and had solid papers ready. This should be shown in every legal class." Meanwhile, Pirro's silence after the event became a story of its own. Fox News only shared a short note saying they were looking into the situation. But sources inside said big changes were coming to the Saturday night lineup. The face-off between Pirro and Crockett would be remembered as a major turning point in US politics on TV the moment the old generation's control started breaking and new leaders stepped forward. It also proved something important. In today's world of fast social media and instant fact-checking, loud voices aren't enough. Facts, proof, and calm strength beat noise and bullying. For young women all across the country, especially women of color, Crockett quickly became a hero. She showed that with solid prep and courage, anyone can challenge even the biggest names in media and win. That's how Jasmine Crockett didn't just answer Pirro's attacks. She completely took down one of Fox's biggest names, using only facts and planning. If you liked this political masterclass, hit that subscribe button and turn on the bell. We'll keep covering the biggest political battles and hidden stories you won't see anywhere else. So who should Crockett take on next? Share your thoughts in the comments.